Manchin stating yet again, we're not going to do anything with the filibuster.
If I was Joe Biden, I would support getting rid of the filibuster.
The president going through these executive actions that they believe are going to stem some of the gun violence that we've seen.
I don't need to wait another minute to take common sense steps that will save the lives in the future.
That more contagious coronavirus variant first found in the UK now dominates here.
All the more reason to get vaccinated as quickly as possible.
Hang in there a bit longer to get each day more and more people by the millions are getting vaccinated.
This is New Day.
All right, welcome to our viewers in the United States and all around the world. This is New Day. It's Thursday, April 8th, 6 o'clock here in New York. I'm John Berman, along with Erica Hill this morning.
Nice to see you this morning.
Good morning to you. So, you know how Dos Equis has the most interesting man in the world, the guy with the beard, right?
Oh, I know all about it.
All right,
yeah.
I know you do. All right. How about the most powerful man in the world, or person? This morning, it might not be President Biden, or Speaker Pelosi, or Angela Merkel, or Xi Jinping. It might be West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin. And the most powerful man in the world, or at least in Washington, Joe Manchin, has just put himself smack dab in the middle of the president's efforts to pass the $2 trillion infrastructure bill. The Democratic senator, Democrat mind you, indicated overnight he is opposed to passing key legislation on strict party votes, that he is alarmed by that process. And since we haven't heard any Republicans saying they support the White House infrastructure plan just yet, that puts it in serious, serious peril. Later this morning, the president will announce his first executive actions on guns in response to the latest flurry of mass shootings.
Meantime, overnight, the United States recording more than 70,000 new coronavirus cases. Hospitalizations, a key indicator that we look at here, climbing to their highest level in a month. And the CDC confirming that the highly contagious variant, which was first identified in the United Kingdom, is now the most common strain of coronavirus here in the United States. Now, despite that, the CDC director also saying overnight she does expect all children will be back in classrooms by September. Let's begin this morning with Jeremy Diamond, who's live at the White House. Jeremy, good morning.
Good morning, Erica. Senator Joe Manchin may not have mentioned President Joe Biden by name in his latest op-ed in the Washington Post, but there's no question that Senator Manchin, the Democrat from West Virginia, has just made the president's job that much harder. Joe Manchin not only reiterating his opposition to the filibuster, to eliminating the filibuster or reforming the filibuster, but also saying that he believes it is dangerous to continue using this budget reconciliation process and passing key legislation along party lines. Let me read you just a small excerpt from this op-ed. Senator Manchin writes, "There is no circumstance in which I will vote to eliminate or weaken the filibuster. I simply do not believe budget reconciliation should replace regular order in the Senate." He goes on to say that it would set a new and dangerous precedent if Democrats continue to move forward by using budget reconciliation as the norm instead of regular order in the Senate, which requires not a simple majority of 50 votes plus the vice president or 51 senators, but 60 votes in order to proceed on legislation. Now, why is this key? That's because Democrats have been eyeing this budget reconciliation process, which they used to pass that $1.9 trillion coronavirus relief bill, now as they look towards passing this massive $2.2 trillion infrastructure proposal that President Joe Biden just laid out over the last week. Now, to be clear, Senator Manchin did not explicitly say, I will not vote for an infrastructure package if indeed it moves forward through the budget reconciliation process, but he is setting a clear marker here and sending a very clear signal not only to Democrats and Republicans in the Senate, but also to the White House that he would like to see this move forward, very much wants to see this move forward in a bipartisan manner. How exactly that gets accomplished, though, is a whole other question, given the fact that Republicans so far have really rejected not only the size and scope of President Biden's proposal here, but also disagree with the ways to pay for it. The president so far has said that he wants to work with Republicans on Capitol Hill, but those areas of agreement really have yet to actually reveal themselves in any significant way. Now, today, we will also see President Biden talking about some steps that he's going to be taking today to act on gun violence in the United States. He's going to take measures to tighten restrictions on these so-called ghost guns, as well as those pistol stabilizing braces, one of which was used in that shooting in Boulder, Colorado. The president also nominating a new ATF director to lead the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, who is a gun control advocate and worked very closely with former Congresswoman Gabby Giffords, who was shot, of course, in that horrific shooting years ago in Arizona. John?
Jeremy Diamond at the White House this morning. Please keep us posted. Joining us now, CNN political analyst Alex Burns. He's a national political correspondent for the New York Times. First of all, congratulations, Alex, to you and MJ. I haven't talked to you since the birth of your child. Beautiful.
Thank you.
I want to read you what Joe Manchin wrote overnight. I simply do not believe budget reconciliation should replace regular order in the Senate. Now, that sounds like a technical line, and I want to play something of a drinking game here without saying the words reconciliation or filibuster. Please explain to us why this is now such a major problem for the infrastructure bill, which the president has said he's going to focus on almost exclusively for the next several months.
Well, John, Democrats in the Senate and really throughout the party have been looking to a certain legislative procedure that's used for spending and taxes only as a way of escaping the Republicans' influence over the Senate and its sort of the required legislative supermajority to proceed on major legislation. I think I did okay in avoiding the buzzwords there. But look, there has been this sense among Democrats, particularly after the parliamentarian ruled last week that they can use that procedure more often than they previously believed that they could, that maybe they can just ram through a whole bunch of trophy legislation, major priorities, including but not limited to infrastructure, on a purely party line basis, the same way they did with the recovery plan. There are a lot of Democrats who are excited about that possibility because they simply do not believe the Republican Party is interested in doing business and having serious negotiations around their priorities. And what Joe Manchin is very, very clearly saying now, and I think it bears sort of dwelling on, John, that he has said this publicly many times before, that his strong preference and perhaps his overwhelming preference is that they work with Republicans, that they make concessions to the other side in order to get things done across the aisle. And there remains, needless to say, enormous skepticism among most Democrats that that's a viable legislative strategy.
You know, to your point, Alex, the fact that this is not the first time we've heard this from Joe Manchin, right? What's behind then, if you know, the decision to put this out there in this op-ed? What is that changing in terms of the message from Joe Manchin, if anything?
Well, there has clearly been, Erica, accelerating momentum on the Democratic side behind this idea of let's basically use reconciliation for everything. Like anything that we can conceivably call budget adjacent, let's ram it into a reconciliation bill and proceed from there, whether it's D.C. statehood or certain immigration provisions, just measures that in the past would not have been seen as natural fits for that budget process. And I think what Manchin is clearly indicating is that that's not an approach that he is enthusiastic about taking right now. I think one of the big questions for Manchin, and I don't expect him to answer it necessarily in a blunt way today, and it might not be answerable right now, is it a red line for him that he doesn't want to use reconciliation on the broad Democratic agenda, or is this mostly an emphatic statement that he wants to try other avenues and exhaust those avenues first? That if he were to find himself in a couple months in a position where it's clear Republicans are actually not interested in doing major infrastructure legislation, and he needs to choose between proceeding on a party line basis or not proceeding at all, I think it's an open question what he would do, but it's very clear that he's not prepared to proceed on a purely party line basis tomorrow.
Well, you just got to what I think is the big question here, Alex, which is how far will Joe Manchin push this? How far will Joe Manchin push this? Will he be the person who stands in the way of Joe Biden getting the infrastructure bill? What's your hunch?
Look, I think he has, as much as he has made so many emphatic statements about preferring bipartisanship, he has also made some pretty emphatic statements about wanting Biden to be a successful president. And so I think on something like infrastructure, if I were the White House, I would be relatively optimistic that you can get to a good place with Joe Manchin eventually, because it's valuable to his home state of Virginia. It is not a super divisive or controversial sort of set of Democratic policy proposals. But on the wider set of ideas that maybe could be shoehorned into a reconciliation vehicle, I'd be much more pessimistic.
You know, I do want to get your take quickly on the fact that we're supposed to hear from President Biden on some executive action when it comes to guns, gun control. This is not the only thing we're going to hear about today when it comes to guns. That, too, is another indication of just how difficult it is, I think, to get things done in Washington right now.
Absolutely. You know, the image that the president is going to be projecting today and the substance of what he's ordering is a clear indication that he wants to be seen as very active and aggressive on gun control. And the man he has chosen to head ATF certainly sends a very, very favorable signal to gun control groups. But it's just really clear right now that there's not a great path in the House and Senate, really in the Senate, for gun control legislation, and that the White House doesn't seem to want to spend a whole lot of time and political capital driving at something that is very unlikely to pass.
Alex Burns, great to see you this morning. Great job playing our games with us.
Thanks a lot.
And also explaining what's so important about this, because the infrastructure bill is so important to the administration and to a lot of Americans as well. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
So the CDC says that the B.1.1.7 variant that we see in the United Kingdom is now the most dominant strain of coronavirus here in the United States. What does this mean for the race between the vaccines and the variants? Next.